This is all about Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things questions and markets related to Bitcoin. Little b for the currency and Bitcoin, big B for the network, a collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation, all Bitcoin, all the time. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Let's have a live look at Bitcoin right now. The Bitcoin price XBX index right now trading at 57,729 after a bit of a retreat this morning. Now Bitcoin is up slightly, about 2.5% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data. All right, let's take a look at some of the headlines moving markets. The Indian government is still seeking to ban most cryptocurrencies, dashing earlier hopes for more friendlier measures in a long-awaited crypto bill that seeks to create a central bank digital currency while also prohibiting all private cryptocurrencies in India, according to official government website Lok Sabha. Crypto prices tanking on Indian crypto exchanges following the announcement, but non-Indian exchanges have not been affected. And NFL star Odell Beckham Jr. is causing a bit of stir on Twitter. He's accepting his new salary in Bitcoin from the Los Angeles Rams as part of an agreement with Square's Cash App. Seems to be a trend. Earlier this month, Green Bay Packers star Aaron Rodgers also unveiled that he would be paid partially in Bitcoin using Cash App.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
Bitcoin is still trading in a bullish channel outlined in green, despite the price dipping below its support level, opening the door to higher highs and lower lows on the daily time frame. While Bitcoin is about 18% away from its record high, analysts tell CoinDesk Omkar Gaboli there is still a clear uptrend. Stack funds saying the recent decline represents a typical bull market correction that may be extended further due to inflationary pressures that will create a risk-off environment. Stack funds further saying, quote, there hasn't been any strong catalyst to propel Bitcoin's price forward, and whales, that is large investors, have not been accumulating like they did in previous bull runs, which paints how global macro uncertainties have kept prices muted. Action in traditional markets indicates potential for a deeper drawdown. The reappointment of Jerome Powell as chairman of the Federal Reserve by U.S. President Joe Biden on Monday reinforced bets that the central bank would hike rates faster to control inflation. U.S. stocks erased earlier gains, while gold and silver fell after Powell's reappointment. Joining us now to discuss the crypto markets and more is John Todaro, Vice President at Needham & Co. and independent investment bank and asset manager. Hello, John. Thanks for joining us. So Bitcoin is rebounding from this morning's retreat. Do you see higher highs and lower lows ahead with a bullish macro backdrop for Bitcoin?
I do. I do think we're still in a bullish macro setup here for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies more broadly. So I am expecting Bitcoin to extend and likely you might start to see us see new highs in, call it Q1 and Q2 of 22 before you might see a longer term correction. I would note this has been one of the longer standing Bitcoin and crypto bull runs. So I do think folks need to be a little bit cautious out there. But I would say I think that the setup still looks strong here for a continued run. I think most of the pullback recently there was a lot of retail froth and excitement in the markets with different meme tokens trading to all-time highs such as Shiba Inu. And then now you've seen a pullback where those tokens have been hit really the hardest. So Dogecoin and Shiba Inu have really pulled back the most. And you've actually seen the metaverse tokens levered to that theme, actually outperforming and performing pretty well. So Sandbox and Decentraland, their token Mana, are actually outperforming on the last few days here.
Mm-hmm. How do you think a second term for Fed Chair Jerome Powell will impact the crypto markets?
So any indication of interest rate hikes, whether those are going to occur sooner than expected, are going to be somewhat detrimental to crypto markets. And that's because, in my view, crypto markets are mostly still kind of a risk-on trade. And anything more risk-on, where yields are potentially more in the future, they're going to be discounted more harshly on an interest rate hike. So that's why tech stocks are also underperforming on the day. Anything that's a a little bit more risk on has the potential to pull back a little bit harder. So I think that's being played into the recent cryptocurrency pullback, but I wouldn't make too much cause of concern around it. The Fed has historically, at least recently, kept rates near zero. And even if we do start to see a rate hike, I don't think it's going to be anything too significant. So I think the setup still looks strong. Obviously, intraday, you're going to see pullbacks based on some of those Fed policy decisions and moves, but I don't think it's anything that should be too much of a cause for concern.
Do you see any headwinds coming out of Asia? We're hearing news reports now that India is submitting a bill to Parliament that will ban private cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin in favor of a central bank digital currency like a digital rupee, following the route of China, it seems, which also is developing their digital yuan, their central bank digital currency that everyone in the nation will be using in 2022 by the Beijing Olympics.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a concern that the policy that we saw come out of China, if that's starting to be replicated and duplicated in other countries, there certainly could start to look like a concern. I would say, I think most Western nations are starting to embrace cryptocurrencies to an extent. So I don't know if these blanket banning policies are going to be duplicated and replicated across the globe. You might see some countries here and there, but I still think a lot of that policy is still being worked out. So while you saw some headlines today with India, I don't think it's going to be the final word. I think a lot of the policy decisions are still being worked out. And I think even in the U.S., they're still being worked out. I think the United States is definitely going to take what looks to be a less aggressive approach than something like a country like China did or some of these other nations. But I wouldn't put too much on that and think there's going to be a broad clamp down.
Some countries are fully embracing Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, like El Salvador, which just announced that they want to build a Bitcoin city. They want to issue a $1 billion worth of Bitcoin bonds, half of which will go toward building that Bitcoin city and purchasing even more Bitcoin. But will that have much of an impact on the markets, do you think? I mean, $1 billion compared to the whole crypto market cap is a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, to that extent, it really is. I mean, the cryptocurrency market cap now is so massive. There's a lot of capital that needs to flood into these markets to really start to move the needle. So small governments, as those are concerned, those aren't going to move the market too materially. It definitely signals the right approach. And I think as governments, even small countries, start to embrace cryptocurrency, that will be read as a positive for the crypto market. But in terms of actually those inflows impacting prices too substantially, I don't think you're going to see much impact from that.
Okay. And finally, John, just quickly, price predictions for the end of the year. I know you're bullish. So.
I never like to make crypto price predictions because it is so volatile. But I would say in our notes we put out at Needham, we do have around 100 grand Bitcoin into Q1 22. So I think around there is probably a decent price we'll see around the new year, hopefully.
All right, John. Thanks for your insights. Appreciate coming on to the show. That was John Todaro, Vice President at Needham & Co. Coming up, we'll head over to more discussion on El Salvador with Bitcoin-focused DeFi platform Sovereign. Welcome back. Time to check in with more top stories. Nigerian payments app CurePay is reportedly suspending operations due to the country's, quote, increasing hostile regulatory environment, according to local media sources. The payments platform plans to suspend services to Nigerian users starting in 2022. By contrast, El Salvador President Nayib Bukele is welcoming crypto exchanges and holders with open arms, planning to build a Bitcoin city with 0% capital gains tax, property tax, payroll tax, and municipal tax. Joining us now to discuss further is Edan Iago, lead contributor of Bitcoin-focused DeFi platform Sovereign. Hello there, Edan. So, when you moved to this Bitcoin city, it's beside a volcano, but, upon hearing of this announcement, what were your thoughts?
Well, I think it's fantastic to see more competition from governments trying to attract people, just generally trying to provide them with better services. And that this is driven by Bitcoin, I think, is a logical conclusion of what we've been seeing with Bitcoin. I think last time I was on the show with you, I said that we should expect to see El Salvador launch Bitcoin bonds. They have been shunned by the global bond market. When Bitcoin became legal tender, the bond price for El Salvador shot up, making bonds much more expensive for them. But by using Bitcoin, they now have access to an entirely different, alternate, permissionless global financial system, and that's Bitcoin. And I think that's the magic of Bitcoin. It provides the same sovereignty to individuals that is now providing to nations. And so nations are trying to attract Bitcoiners by providing them more sovereignty as well.
Who do you think will buy these Bitcoin bonds? And is this a way for them to get around the IMF and El Salvador?
I think it certainly opens up a different route for them, a different form of funding, which they can now access. Bitcoin is a multi-trillion-dollar asset. The crypto space is a multi-trillion-dollar asset class. There's a very significant economy that's being built here, and it is growing remarkably fast, faster than any other part of the economy. So who will be purchasing this? I expect that we'll see a lot of the purchases by people who are interested in supporting the cause of furthering Bitcoin and furthering freedom and sovereignty. And I think that's part of a larger trend that we're seeing in the financial space, and that also Bitcoin has been a major, if not the major player in, which is that people are now realizing that they can vote with their money and that their financial action can change the world.
Mm-hmm. Is there any concern about the volatility that could happen with the crypto markets and building this city and relying on money coming from Bitcoin profits?
So I think it certainly does introduce more volatility, right, to the world when we force countries, right, like El Salvador, to go further out into the risk curve. And indeed, El Salvador have been forced to do this. Their bond prices became more expensive. But in a broader sense, I think this is actually going to dampen volatility significantly. What we're starting to see is Bitcoin emerging into a major asset class, which is being used to finance the exact same things that other major asset classes and other major currencies are used to finance as well. It is truly taking and maturing into its role as a reserve currency. And with that, we're going to start to see the volatility in Bitcoin dampen. That doesn't mean that Bitcoin will stop increasing in value. It's likely to continue to increase in value, but the shocks and the sort of blow of tops will probably be muted.
Do you think Bitcoin will eventually replace the US dollar as a global reserve currency?
I think if the current policy of the United States and the United States Federal Reserve continues, right, which is creating a great deal of uncertainty for the dollar, then the long-term view is that people are going to be looking for a politically neutral and monetarily reliable reserve asset. The fiat system that we currently exist with has existed for a very, very short space of time. 50 years, right? A blink of the eye in historical terms. Since 1971, when Nixon removed the gold window for the dollar. And it represents a historical anomaly. It is extremely likely that we will return to a reserve base which is not controlled by any given country, and we'll see currencies tied once again to a neutral gold-like or commodity-like money as the reserve currency. And it's looking more and more certain that that's going to be Bitcoin, because we live in a digital age now, and so Bitcoin as the digital gold is likely to take that role.
Wow. Well, we'll see. It's a huge experiment. Very exciting to see what happens. All right, Idan, thank you for joining us. Appreciate your insights. That was Sovereign contributor Idan Iago. And that's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee, and we'll do it all over again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Join us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for First Mover as well. You're watching CoinDesk TV.